to thank everyone for coming. This is the Los Angeles Visionaries Association 42nd monthly Sunday Salon. Did I say that correctly, Kim?
What did you say?
The 42nd LAVA monthly Sunday Salon. No, it's the Sunday Salon.
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's our 42nd Sunday Salon. We started life at Clifton's Cafeteria, God rest its soul. Through the many iterations of Clifton's, we moved on to Cafe Figaro, and Jonathan closed Cafe Figaro in August, and now we're here with the blessing of Johnny Valenti. He's a really good guy, and we're going to get started. We do this every month. We're so glad everyone's here. And Joan, say hi to everyone. Okay, this is Joan. So let's get started. The salon, if you've attended our past salons, we've shifted gears. This is a more intimate space, as many of you immediately figured out from salons at Clifton's and Figaro. We're going to break this up into bite-sized pieces. We encourage questions and interactions, okay? So this is not just going to be a monolithic talk. Joan, you're going to read some poetry. I'm going to ask you some questions. We're going to take some questions. We're going to take a break. We're just going to sort of ease into this, okay? So why don't you come on up and let's get started. Okay. All right. So So Joan and I have discussed this at length. We have 3 parts, and you're just going to get started without any introduction by reading your poem about the movie. I'm going to pull that up for you. Okay, hold on. Got it? And you just touch the edge of the screen and advance it.
Look what they invented the last time I used a typewriter. That's amazing. I've never done this before, Richard. I'm nervous.
You're perfect.
I mean this.
Oh. Do you know how to turn the pages?
She does.
Wait, I'm trying not to touch it. Okay, well, I'm a poet. And you know, okay. And I love the movies, and I wrote poems back in the 70s about them, not knowing I could or should. And then Edward Field, the poet, New York City, he was writing a lot of them, and then I thought, well, I really can do it. And this is kind of a movie poem that turned into a feminist statement. What I learned from the movies: when I hear shocking news, I will faint. When my fiance leaves me holding a candlestick in the haunted house staircase to go for help 20 miles away, the vampire will bite my neck. When my fiance and the bad guy begin to fight over the nitroglycerin, uranium, or something that will destroy every little thing on Earth if spilled, I will hit on the head with a Ming vase, baseball bat, or Maltese falcon my fiance. When the handsome singing cowboy who saved my life and my father's ranch from the dastard baker or Apaches kisses me and rides off into the horizon on his white horse, I will smile and disappear. When I am in family way and ride a horse or walk downstairs, I will fall and lose the child I'm carrying. When my child coughs or sneezes, he or she will die. When my child dies, my husband will blame me, and I will take to street walking and drinking whiskey with stevedores along the wharf, lose my looks and will to live, and throw myself beneath the wheels of a locomotive or a black LaSalle sedan. When a telegram arrives, it will always tell me that my fiancé has died in the war. When the moon is full, a man will either kill me or kiss me. When I wear marabou and contemplate suicide while gazing at the Manhattan skyline, Fred Astaire will ask me to dance. When Elvis tries to kiss me on a balcony, a gang of girls will ask him to sing while they push me over the railing into a swimming pool. When Marilyn Monroe is near,
that's a cliffhanger.
Richard, help.
Okay.
I hit a button and it's got
Stay close, darling. Stay close.
the last page of
What?
Okay. When Marilyn Monroe appears, suddenly I will bear a striking resemblance to a bean and egg burrito. When I am 40 like Blanche Dubois, yet still have smooth creme fraiche skin, I will place paper lanterns over light bulbs of desire to hide my aging face, to spare young men from shrinking from the hideousness of my old womanness. And when I am 50, like Norma Desmond, even though I still have skin as smooth as cream cheese, I will beg for close-up so as to terrify every man on earth with my antiquity. And when I'm 70 or more and must scrub floors to earn a living, I will work on my hands and knees with rags and buckets while the men use mops and smoke cigars. And when I cry, oh, and they call for a doctor and he tells them to boil water, I will die.
Okay, perfect. You're doing great. You're doing great. You know, we're going to get you one of these, and then the next time it'll just be second nature to turn a page. Okay, so I'm going to properly introduce you. You're Joan Jobe Smith. You're a poet. We're going to talk about a couple of things today in this order. We're going to talk about the motivation that your memoir came out of. Your memoir is Tales of an Ancient Go-Go Girl. We're going to talk about your father, Avner, Ray. We're going to talk about my hero, Sheriff Peter Bitches, and your father, and their work together. And we're going to talk about your work with Charles Bukowski. Okay? And in the course of all of that, we're going to talk about Orange County biker gangs and go-go bars in the late 1960s. And at the very end, you're going to remind us about Deep Throat and how it killed go-go bars. Okay, great. So, I know you have a lot to get to, so let's do it. So, Joan, why did you write this? And we agreed I would throw this out as a starter, as material for this. You didn't write this for revenge. You didn't write it as a confession, and you didn't write it for exploitation. You wrote it for your dad, right?
Yeah.
So go, run with that. You want me to put? Okay. Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Yep. I think you can speak conversation this way.
Yeah. Oh. Well, first I started writing it.
Okay.
Because I was friends with Bukowski, and I would tell him my stories when we talked long distance on the telephone. And he said, I need to write about that. The go-go scene really impressed him. He was really thrilled by it because he had never seen any of it. He, you know, where he drank. If you know Bukowski, I hope many of you know who he is. And he really encouraged me to write it because it was so different. And then I told him about the time, the biggest, why I went into the go-go bars is that my husband left me with 3 children, and I had to go out and make a living. And during the course of doing that, during the course of doing that, my ex-husband started having a nervous breakdown. He started stalking me and threatening me. And then he ultimately tried to murder me with his bare hands. And I told Bukowski that story, and it happened on Bukowski's birthday in 1965. And then 10 years later, I told Bukowski that story. Okay, go way down. I forgot the question.
You told him that story 10 years later.
Right.
So anyway, I told Bukowski the story 10 years later, and he said, you got to write about that. And so I did. And I also wanted to honor my father, because without my father going after the bad guy, things would have got worse for me. And in those days when men did things to women the police didn't. Especially I was a go-go girl, and that didn't set too great with the police to have to complain about that. So,
okay, perfect. Okay, so let's we're going to talk sort of around the central incident of your memoir now.
Yeah.
Keeping with Abner, your Ray.
Yeah.
He's known as Ray. Abner, Abraham, Hebrew, Abraham. So your father comes to see you in the hospital over Labor Day weekend, 1965, after your former husband has almost beaten you to death, and he has a heart attack. Just walks into the hospital room and has a heart attack. So I want you to take us through the next 6 to 8 weeks where he gets on the phone, calls the chief of police of Long Beach, chief of police of Downey, to no avail because this is a crime against a woman and they're not terribly interested. He finally gets on the phone with Sheriff Peter Pitches. So just get us through that arc.
Well, the first chapter of my go-go memoir starts out with my father talking about what had happened to me, and I recount telephone conversations he had with the police. He was on the phone person to person to Pete Pitches and the chief of police of Long Beach and the chief of police of Downey, Ivan Robinson, telling him, demanding that they go after the man that had assaulted me. Because at first it just appeared that it was only a wife beating, and that didn't mean a whole lot. But my father was adamant about it, and he went after him and talked to them on the phone. And after a while, he became friends with them, and he finally got them to go look for him. And they found him and arrested him. And my father had suffered a heart attack, and while he was doing all this, he was quite ill and recovering from his heart attack. And then he died the week before my assailant was
arrested.
Was finally brought to trial.
Right. You're going to fill in the blanks, I know, but this is good stuff. Your father gets in September of 1965. Your father and Peter Pitches form a friendship.
Yes.
I've spoken to old timers in the sheriff's department, and they say this is pure Peter Pitches. As the sheriff of Los Angeles County, and any crime that occurs in the county of Los Angeles is of intrinsic interest to him. Pitches couldn't get the chief of police of Long Beach to pick this up. He starts talking to your father. He sends men from his intelligence squad. So an intelligence squad, the LAPD and the sheriff's department used to have these units that would wiretap people and do background investigations. This is a way for Sheriff Pitches to fight with the county board of supervisors by gathering dirt on them. We don't know, but it's possible, and this is what I'm about to say is just conjecture, but based on the fact that Sheriff Peter Pitches' top intelligence agent would be future Sheriff Sherman Block, it's entirely possible Sherman Block compiled the dossier on you. And you now have to explain to people why Pitches had a dossier compiled on you.
Well, because I was a go-go girl. And the go-go bar I worked at the time, and I've since found out, was mafia-owned. And I think Richard agreed with this, that the mafia ran the go-go business in Los Angeles, and it was very thriving. And one of the reasons they managed them is it was a place to launder money from Vegas. And so they found out where I worked, and they went there to question everybody, what kind of a person I was, and I was a nice girl. And then I got my final letter of recommendation, my A+ from the mafia. We called them, she was a nice girl. And so they went after him. So the mafia and my father helped me bring justice to someone that was giving me a lot of trouble in my life and might have eventually do me in.
Perfect.
So I have fond feelings and a heart in my heart for some of the mafia. There's the mafia guys I knew. They were very nice to me.
Okay. Just so we can get through this quickly. So Sheriff Peter Pitches investigates you, he investigates your former husband, and he files charges he presents a case to the district attorney of Los Angeles, and they file charges against your former husband. Do you want to take us through, well, your father died a week before the trial.
Yes.
At the end of November of '65. Do you want to just bring us through the trial, your father's death and the trial?
Well, my father died the week before the trial. He was going to go with me and to make sure, well, and plus I was provided with protection in the courtroom. And my ex-husband had requested a trial by a jury, I mean a judge rather than a jury. And he didn't even get an attorney. He was so sure he'd get off, because a lot of men did for so-called wife beating is how simply they called it, and possibly they do today. But there's still there's I think 4 out of 5 women today assaulted by their male companions, a husband or a lover. So my father died the week before, so I had to go alone, and it was quite scary. And I appeared before a judge rather than a jury. And when the judge saw me there, 95 pounds, in the witness stand, they looked out at the defendant, who was 250 pounds at 6'2". All the judge did was say, "Are you the victim?" And I said yes. And he said, "Guilty as charged." And that was the end of it. So I didn't even have to, feebly describe the incident. So the judge was also good to me.
Right.
Maybe he was part of the mafia too.
I do think good chance was part of the mafia. What I want to do is I want you to read the poem about the biker bar in Lakewood.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to get to the Orange County biker gangs as
Yeah.
quickly as possible, because
Okay.
they're a great topic. While we're still on the topic of the notion of justice for your former husband, while I pull up the poem about the biker gangs, do you want to talk about their offers to you before the trial, when your father was still trying to convince Peter Bitches?
Oh yeah, yeah. The bar I worked at, the Hessians came in now and then.
You have to explain who the Hessians are. People don't.
Yeah.
Do you
Not
know who
everyone
the
knows.
Hessians are?
No one knows who the Hessians are.
Do you know who what's the other biker gang?
I don't.
The Hells Angels.
Yeah.
You know who
And
they
there's
are?
the Mongols, and there's
Yeah,
we
okay.
don't know about them though.
Yeah, the Hessians were kind of a lesser badass gang back then, but nevertheless they were scary, and they hung out at the bar I worked at occasionally. And one of the rainy Sundays I worked there, they came in en masse and took over the bar. And the other 2 girls that were working with me that day, they left. They said, "I'm out of here. I don't want to be around these bad guys." And the bouncer, who was like 6'6" and was actually a hitman for the mafia, he got scared and he went in the office and hid out and left me there to serve the Hessians all day. And one of the Hessians...
You should explain to people how you served the beer, and you would like buzz for the manager. You wouldn't get into the details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't hear.
You should explain how you would serve them the beer, and you could go when the Hessian came in. You should explain how you served the beer to them when the Hessian came in.
Oh.
Yeah.
I still don't get your question.
So the Hessian come into the bar, and just explain to them how you were dancing and also serving the beer.
Oh, yes. I danced and served the beer, and they all took over the pool area, and then I served them their beer, and they tipped me $1, and the beer cost like $1.75 then for a pitcher. And then the manager was hiding in the back room in the office, and he disconnected the phone. So if there hadn't been any need for me to call the police or anything, I couldn't have called them. But it turned out that they were all really nice to me. And one of the Hessians was a novice at the time, and later he became a lover of mine. We were lovers for like 10 years. And he quit the Hessians and opened a business later on. And what else, Richard?
That's a good thread. Everyone wants to hear more about that.
Yeah. I want to hear more. Well, that's one of the chapters of my book. It's called The Texan. No, it's called Love the One You're With. And so that day, one of the Hessians got a crush on me, and it lasted for about 10 years of my life. And but anyway, they spent this lovely afternoon, and it was a crazy day, and it was just me and the Hessians. And do you want me to read the poem?
Yeah, let me go ahead and get that.
And everybody, you know, somebody would walk in, and maybe if a Hessian walked in here right now, he'd turn around and see all these books and go running out. The way that in 1965, the golfers, the rained out golfers did when they walked in and saw the bikers.
Okay, so just to set this poem up geographically a little bit more, this bar is called Abner's 5. It was in Lakewood. It was across the street from the golf course. So if you just want to give us a little geography on this before you read the poem, so we're situated. But Lakewood, by the way, is not Orange County. It's the county of Los Angeles. Okay.
I don't think any mafia ever went to Orange County. But anyway,
oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Let me.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Well, this poem's called Easy Riders. On Sundays, the doldrums between Saturday night's revelry, devilry, and Monday morning's misery of having to start the whole week all over again. Rain or shine, the bikers came into Abner's 5. Not to see us go-go girls, but to take over. Run off the pool hustlers, the surfers playing the Beach Boys on the jukebox. The only ones who stayed not afraid, the World War II vets, and the serious boozers drying out on beer after Saturday night's whiskey blackout. And I wasn't as much afraid of the bikers as I was their bloodshot eye of snake and skull tattoos and their smells of sweat and grease that would have warded off even the ancient evils. Of a Cro-Magnon cave, because the bikers always called me baby or little darling or doll and never pinched me or tried to sell me dope. And now, years later, I like to think, I hope, as I did back then, that they respected me being the psychics that they were with eyes on the backs of their heads, always on the lookout for the law so they could make laws of their own, and thought me a cool chick, even though I was straight and nice. But the truth was, I know now, just like I really did then, that they didn't think I had the makings of a good biker old lady. What with my scrawny bod weighing only 95 pounds, not tough enough to help change a flat tire, not sexy enough to tighten jeans and perch upon the back of a big black Harley.
Okay, good. So I want to we're gonna talk. We're gonna take a break in about 5 to 10 minutes, and then when we come back, you're gonna talk about the memoir proper, the fort, the Watts riot. We're gonna get into all of that, and then Charles Bukowski. Before we do, we agreed that you were just to take us down a path to whet our appetites. You were going to tell us how you became friends with Anaïs Nin at the end of her life, and that she asked you to teach her how to go-go dance. And this would be a great way to sort of wrap up part one, is you're going to tell us about this incident of Anaïs Nin asking you to teach her to go-go dance.
Okay. That's one of the more fun parts of my life. Now, do any of you know what go-go is? I mean,
no.
What is this?
Show us.
It's not the pole dancing that being denotated as go-go now, because this was the days when belly buttons were outlawed on state beaches, and it was a lot different. And the go-go dances were very silly when you'll see snippets of the Doors long ago on Ed Sullivan's show or something, and you see how the dances were. They were silly. They had names like Funky Chicken and the Pony and Shing-a-ling, Boogaloo, James Brown Steps, the Funky Chicken, the Monkey. These silly names, and girls got arrested for dancing these dances. And later on, when I was at UCI, and at Cal State Long Beach, I produced a literary journal called Pearl, and I met Annie's Nin. I hope you all know who she is. And is it Henry Miller up there on the wall? Well, anyway, she was Henry Miller's original publisher in France. Her rich husband funded his first book that was banned for 100 years. And but anyway, Annie's Nin found out I was doing Pearl, and she wanted to get involved. And I met her through a poet named Rochelle Holt, and so she and I became telephone friends. We talked for about a year, and we'd have long phone conversations. The modern generation doesn't know what it's like to sit on the phone for 2 hours and talk to someone on the phone. I guess they have as much fun with these things as we did going like that. We had to like hold our head, and they like to go like this. And Annie's Nin lived here in LA on Hidalgo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, in Silver
and by Silver Lake. And she wanted me to come visit her, but I was going to law school at the time, and I couldn't get away. And I had 3 small children, and I couldn't leave them to go traipsing off to meet Annie's Nin. And she wanted me to teach her how to go-go dance. And it's not as ludicrous as it sounds, because she was very, very into dancing. She had studied under Isadora Duncan in the 1900s, and had become what they called then the Isadorables. And so she took dancing lessons from Isadora Duncan in Paris when Annie's Nin was a teenager and living in Paris with her rich family. And so this was just part of her little resume, her little dossier of wanting to learn all these dance steps. So I had to pass up my chance of a lifetime to teach her how to go-go dance because I was in law school. And that's something I regret. It would have been nice to meet her, and I never got to, because about a year later she came down she was diagnosed with cancer and went through chemo. And she was very, very ill for the next year or 2. And she died, I think, in January of '77. So regretfully, I didn't get to meet her, and I wish I could have. I would like to have a picture of that with her wearing she wanted to wear my go-go fringe from the costume I had. She was a tiny woman, so she would have fit into it. So there we are.
Good, good. That was a great story. Questions? Let's go. Questions? You get a chance to buy her a beer in just 1 minute. Questions? Yeah, yes, Jen, you're back there. I see you.
Can she do a little bit of one of those go-go dances?
So, Joan, will you show us your moves? Just.
Sorry, I'm not good at it, but let me tell you why. 2 weeks ago, my husband Fred, that bright red shirt on, is a big Doors fan, and we've got the Doors movie taped on our BDRMLT, whatever they're called. And we were watching it, and toward the end, the Doors do LA Woman, and I love LA Woman. And I want that played at my funeral, and with Begin the Beguine, because I love Artie Shaw. And so I got up and go-go danced, and for about 5 minutes, because I got to tell you why. I got a great granddaughter named Capri, don't I? And Christmas, they were playing LA Woman around the Christmas tree. And little Capri had just turned 1, and she's this big. No, she's not my granddaughter, she's my great-granddaughter. Yeah,
That's
my great-granddaughter. She's this big, and she was dancing to LA Woman, and I thought, my God, it was just amazing that she's up there doing all these moves. 1 year old, you know, these modern moves. So I thought if Capri could do it, I could do it. Got up, but the thing is I was wearing thong shoes. You know, don't go dance in thong shoes. I couldn't get out of bed the next day, and I only danced for about 3 minutes. So no, I'm not going to go dance.
Okay, good. God bless you. We're going to take a short break. What are you drinking? What do you want people to buy? Just a beer? You take a beer?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, Jen's going to buy you a beer, and we'll come back in about 10 minutes, and we'll continue. When we come back, you're going to read from the memoir, the Fort, the Night of the Watts Riots, which is the central incident. Yeah, I know. We're going to get into all of that. Okay, so we'll be right back. Thank you.
Okay.
You're doing great. All right, so we're gonna get down and to the heavy lifting of your life as a go-go girl on the night of the Watts Riots at the Fort, which is Wilmington or Long Beach, I forget.
No, I think it's actually Los Angeles there where the Fort is, because I think it's a little.
It's okay. I'll figure this out while you're reading it. But the border of Wilmington and Long Beach.
Yeah.
All right, but before we get to Wilmington, which is one of my favorite places in the world, you're going to tell us about the night you danced for the Doors at the Whiskey. Okay? It was a single audition, and this will get us just sort of started. So take it away.
Okay, to get back to my psychotic assailant that I call Othello in my memoir. And Shakespeare might approve. I never, okay, so I went to, when he started stalking me, I got really frightened of him. I thought, I gotta change jobs. So I thought I'd leave Long Beach, where that go-go bar was, Abner's 5, and go to the Fort. No, go to Whiskey. And I auditioned there. And this was June of '66. Is that right, Fred?
Yeah.
It was June, yeah. I keep forgetting the year. So it was June '66. The Doors were playing there, and they weren't famous yet. And so I auditioned, and I danced to this god-awful music. You couldn't dance to this stuff. Light my fire, doodly doodly. That's what was going through my head when I was trying to dance to it. I thought, who are these guys? And the girls I was dancing with, who were regulars there, they didn't like them either, because they were really, really hard to dance to. And it's like when you're working a job that you have to push papers, so your boss will make, think you're the best person they've ever hired. Try to do that when you're hired to be a dancer and the music is doodly doodly and you can't find a beat to it. You just stand there and you know the boss is going to fire you because you look terrible. And I met the Doors. I don't mean I shook hands with them and, hi, I'm Joni and you're Jim and you're Robbie and etc. I just like bumped into him, and Jim Morrison just stunk to high heaven, and when I saw him, I thought he was one of the hippies that had wandered in off Sunset and jumped up on the stage and started singing. You'd find that a lot in bars, wherever they had music. There'd be someone who would hop up on the stage or on top of the bar, like up there, and being on the ceiling and start wiggling around. And the bouncers would grab him and throw him out. And I kept waiting for the bouncer to throw this guy out. And he's drunk and he's doing weird stuff. And that's how I remembered him. And I just didn't know how he was getting away with this. And then years later, when I saw him on TV, and that song, Light My Fire, was #1, and the next year I'm dancing to that on a stage someplace. And I thought, my God, those guys got famous with that song, the one that gave me blisters and it made my stomach hurt, and trying to find a beat to it. And by the way, I did get hired at Whiskey, but I didn't take the job because it was so far away from where I lived in Long Beach, and there was no place to park. And I imagine it's worse now.
Okay. Just to finish the arc, you became friends with some of the band members later, and then the mural that was recently painted near you.
Oh yes, yes. Well, the Doors redeemed themselves to me. Let's put it that way, because I held a grudge against them for a long time, and I never liked their music, except LA Woman. I liked that. And then Jim Morrison died, and you know, the music kind of died from the Doors. And my husband Fred Voss, he absolutely adores Jim Morrison. We've got his picture on the wall. We've got an album, a treasured album that's framed, that's on the wall. And we've got posters. He just paid $5 for a poster and fingerprints that's hanging on our bookcase. So Fred kind of opened the doors to my doors of perception to start liking the Doors a little bit better. And then last June, I got a chance to attend a CD launch party for LA poet Michael C. Ford. Some of you might know who he is. And he's best buds with the Doors. He actually played with the Doors in the beginning, and then they later replaced him with John Dinsmore, the drummers, or Robbie Krieger. They replaced.
He was going to play bass, and they didn't.
Oh, they decided they didn't want a bass. They never replaced him with anything. Yeah. And at the, well, actually, I met John Dinsmore the year before when he was doing a book signing at Fingerprints. And I waited all day long to get up to meet him. And when I got up to meet him, I said, I once danced live in Whiskey to you guys a long time ago. And I'm waiting for him to not say, I remember you, Joni, but just say, oh, okay, an old go-go girl. Not nice to see you. But he didn't. He just smiled. And I thought, oh, okay. I guess there's 1,000 go-go girls that go up to him every time he does a book signing and says that. And I figure I'm 100 years old. How many of us that are still alive? And it can actually waddle up there, you know, and on our walkers and say, hey, I'm an old go-go girl. And he'd go, So a year later, I get to go to the CD launch party, and Robbie Krieger and John Dinsmore were going to play because they're still buds with Michael C. Ford. But John Dinsmore had an emergency appendectomy the night before, so I didn't get to rub it in his face, pie in the face at him again about the old go-go story. Then here I am again, groupie boopy. And so he wasn't there, but Robbie Krieger was. And so 100 years later, how many years was that? 49 years later, or 48 years later, I actually danced and had a happy time with Robbie Krieger, and really had a great time, and fell madly in love with the Doors at the age of I was 74 last year. And so I fell in love with the Doors after all, and I couldn't wait to go up afterwards and say hello to Robbie Krieger and say it to him. And say, hi, I'm an old go-go girl, and I dance you guys way back. So I'm inching up there to go say hi to him, and Fred said, I'm tired, let's go home. So I didn't get to say my old silly little thing to Robbie Krieger. So maybe someday I'll get to meet John Dinsmore and Robbie Krieger, and maybe next time they'll just maybe nod.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So Joan, we're now just going to jump in. You're going to read us the passage from your memoir, which takes place the night of the Watts Riots at the fort. So
yeah,
you do a very good job of describing the smell of the fort. So I think it's really important you set up the fort before you start to read from this.
Good.
And remember,
this is really uranium, isn't it?
No, it's not. Remember, just don't be afraid.
Okay, yeah, he showed me how to, you don't hug it, you smack it. I've never used one of these things. But Richard's been to the area where the fort is, and the fort, it was called the fort because it was built to look like one. And maybe you've been around the old beach style buildings from long ago. They use these old pier pilings, you know, to to make beer bars and whatevers. And so anyway, it actually looked like a fort. It was made, and it's in the worst part of town. Well, it's not. I don't want to call it the worst. It's over there in Wilmington, right by the harbor, and the oil refineries are off that way, and the smell of the oil refineries.
The Navy was still there.
The Navy was still there, and the shipyards were still there, and this place was packed every day with stevedores and bikers and sailors and hardworking men from the oil refineries. So it was just full of men. And they didn't give a crud about go-go, but there was go-go dancing there anyway in the daytime. They were hard-working men. And so it was in a really rugged part of town, but I don't mean rugged from crime. It was just where all the hard work takes place in that part of town. Outside the fort for miles and miles were auto wrecking yards and marine wrecking yards and the railroad across the street. So that was the environment of the fort. And I lived in Long Beach, and I went to work that night at the fort. I'd only been there about 2 weeks, and I'd only been working in a go-go bar about a month, and I was still very raw and getting used to things. And the Watts Riots broke out, and I didn't know about it. And because I worked nights and I'd slept all day, and I went to work anyway as usual. I worked the night shift, got there at 6 o'clock, and when I went on the Long Beach Freeway to drive to Wilmington, down Anaheim to get to the fort, it's on Anaheim, right before you get to Wilmington, in the middle of nowhere, except there's all kind of stuff going on there. And so this is how it began. So you know where it's at, the location. And this is a chapter called A Ticket to Ride. And it's prefixed with a Shakespeare's epigram in reference to Desdemona and Othello, but I can't remember right now. Okay, seeing the fort empty of its usual clientele, those miserable, overworked maelstrom of drinking men was a strange surprise, like looking into an empty coffin you've dug up out of its grave. Mick, now the manager was named Mick Jackson, and I didn't name him that for any kind of referential reference to Michael Jackson. I wrote this in 1975. In 74, before Michael Jackson was, the big story was. Mick was such a good dancer up on the pool table, dancing to Mick Jagger's Satisfaction. And I was enjoying his show, so I must have been smiling when Mick turned and saw me standing there below him watching. "Why the fuck are you doing here? And why are you laughing?" He screamed, covering the front of himself as if he were naked. Then, flinging his arms upward like a Nureyev who might fly away, he jumped off the pool table and landed softly on his feet, a thump barely audible, like that of a cat's from a hot tin roof. He craned his chin to look over his shoulder at his backside. See how it looked in the mirror, bent like that. Looked great. He had a cute, round, firm buttocks like perfect twin angel food cakes. He ran to the jukebox and unplugged the Rolling Stones to shriek at me again. "What the fuck are you doing here?" "Ta-da, I work here, remember? Why's the fourth door closed and almost locked? Where are all those working, stiff, thirsty men?" "There's a riot going on, don't you know? A riot, man, in Watts. LA's on fire. They've called out the National Guard." He shook, nervous, all shook up. His pupils were dilated, too, and sweat glistened all over him as if he were wrapped in cellophane. "I got it. He'd taken some drug." "A riot's going on and you've taken some drug?" He smiled. "Yeah, LSD. What are you going to do about it? Call the cops? Or are you really a narcotics officer like everyone thinks you are because you're so fucking square?" "Want to arrest me? Got handcuffs?" He held out his wrists. "For your information, narc, if you are one, LSD is not a drug. It's a legal mind expander." "I wish I were a narcotics officer," I said. I really did. I longed for an ordinary law-abiding life A respectable uniform to wear instead of all this fringe bikini. Well, just in case you are a narc, Mick reached under the cash register in the dark cubbyhole where cockroaches the size of brass knuckles lived, and pulled out a gun and pointed at me. Just don't try anything if you are a narc. Let this be a warning to you if you are. He bared his teeth like Bogart, the Maltese Falcon, then shoved the pistol into the front pocket of his tight black pants, looking like the hard you-know-what he wanted it to look like. Then asked, you really don't know about the Watts Riots? No. You stupid or something? How can anyone not know about the riots? I slept all day. I don't subscribe to a newspaper. I didn't turn on the TV today. And I didn't listen to the radio in my car on the way to work because I want some peace and quiet before I get here to this. There. Oh, it went backwards. Ah.
No, right here.
Okay, go one more. Okay, there.
Noisy place.
To this noisy place. I was really getting tired of jukebox music. All those Rolling Stones and rock and roll songs playing over and over for my 9-hour shifts were starting to mind buzz me. Guess you're really an arc. Guess you're really not an arc. An arc would know about the riots. Come on, I'll show you the riots. Fuck man, the whole fucking world is coming to a fucking end. Gee, it's fun to say fuck sometimes. What'll you see? Mick took my hand, yanking me across the bar through the askew tables and chairs, across the sticky dance floor, onto the scruff stage, to the door, to a secret staircase that led to the flat, greasy, black-tarred roof of the fort, where guys in the band hid out to do drugs and drink whiskey during breaks and after hours. Up there on the roof, the penthouse, they called it, Mick and I could see for miles, northeast, west, south, the whole of Los Angeles, California, USA, where all the dirty business of a big city took place. The fort stood in the midst of the pits, the sludge scrapings off the waste and sewage of all the odious vermin like you and me in the county, the mountain-high piles of manure, trash, ash, smashed automobiles, trucks, buses, dead refrigerators, stoves, television sets, railroad cars, maybe some puke and blood and toe jam too. And dancing behind this wild poo yonder was the fiery fringe of Watts 10 miles away as the buzzards, crows, pigeons flew in the distance, burning, burning. Beyond that, at Los Angeles' sprawling horizon stood the San Gabriel Mountains turning purple in the twilight. In front of them, a swished stripe of riotous black smoke, like that of a 100-mile wild bold, an angry Van Gogh brushstroke across the amazingly blue and innocent sky. Jet planes from LAX, not far away, made fast getaways and glowed mercury sky slivers from the setting sun just as a full moon appeared. A full moon rising like no other, just like every full moon ever born is like no other before. That particular full moon, though, was the LA Watts Riots moon, and it stared down at us with grand, magnificent indifference and self-satisfaction for being as free as a just-let-go helium-puffed balloon, far away from the maddening, pyromaniacal crowd that was riot-making. Man, wow, wow. Just like Birmingham, Atlanta, and Gone with the Wind. And this is real, Mick yelled. Real. It cost a movie studio billions of dollars to set this up. Isn't that something? Isn't that the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? And hear the sound effects. Isn't this fun? Shotguns and rifles and pistols and police and fire and ambulance sirens banged and whined and screamed in the distance as some men and women too, who weren't really rioting, had nothing to riot about, play active rioting, getting in on the fun. A city running amok, the reason for them to let loose, let it all hang out, and do a little or a whole lot of shaken mayhem. As this hot August 12th, 1965 sun finally dropped behind the Pacific Palisades to the west of us, and the sky turned royal blue, the horizon turned magenta, then blood red, the riot smoke contributing to one of the most spectacular sunsets I'd ever seen. Los Angeles can be so beautiful when it wants to be. I guess up again. Wow, said Mick, moved by the sunset too. Just before he turned to me and kissed me on the mouth, I pulled away. Aw, come on, stop playing hard to get. I know you dig me, I see how you look at me. He pulled my skinny bod next to his skinny bod. He only outweighed me by about 5 pounds at that, and I only weighed 98 pounds. How about a quickie on my desk or on the pool table? We can watch ourselves fuck in the mirror. We'll be the last people on earth to fuck while the world comes to a fucking end. Doesn't that sound fun? Again, I pushed him away. Mick staggered a bit, shook his head. That mind-expanding legal LSD he'd taken was coming on quickly now. No thanks, Mick, I said. A pool table doesn't sound fun to me. I gotta go home. I walked down the hidden staircase and back into the stinky bar. Party pooper, Mick mumbled, just as the fort door rattled, then flung open, flashing sunset through the dark barroom. Oh shit, Mick squeaked like a girl when he saw 2 huge black men. While they rubbed their eyes to get used to the dark, Mick pulled the pistol out of his pants pocket. The fort's closed, dude, he shrieked. Get the fuck out of here, dudes, before I shoot your motherfucker asses. What? What's happening, man? Said one of the black men, huskily, fine and mellow. When he finally saw the pistol Mick brandished, he raised his hands over his head. Hey, man, we cool, honest, man. Cool it, man, put away the gun. Get out of here now, I said. Mick twisted the pistol in the air like it was a lariat. Looters! Looting motherfuckers! Or, as Shakespeare might have said, whoremongering, roguish knaves. Looters? No, man. We paying customers. We just came to see the Rivingtons, man. Pa-pow, pow, pow, ma-man, mow, mow. Man, you know. He danced a little twist, smiled friendly. The fort's closed, gentlemen, I said. There's a riot going on. I pointed in the direction of Los Angeles Watts, California, USA. Riot? We don't know nothing about no riot. We came from Riverside to see the Rivingtons. Both of them picked a bar stool to shield themselves from possible gunfire. I walked to the door and held it open for them and said, "Come back, gentlemen, when the riots are over." Quickly they ran out the door, fast shoe tracks crunching the parking lot gravel outside. Mick laughed, ha ha ha, clicked the gun. It wasn't loaded, of course. I knew he was too puny to be so pushy and brave and unafraid of bullets. Oh, ha ha, Mick, real funny. Action, just a little action. The fort is a rockin' place, he laughed, looking at himself in the mirror. Then, as soon as he tucked the pistol back into the black hole beneath the cash register, its home amongst the demonic cockroaches, Mick started seeing tarantulas crawling on the mirror. Blubbering, he crawled on top of a pool table, as if into a baby's crib, where he curled into a fetal position and began to scream, his mind expanding, I surmised. I'm on fire, Mick shrieked, writhing in his drug-induced agony, kicking billiard balls that bounced against the green felt rails and onto the barroom floor. I almost called for an ambulance to take him away, save his life, but he looked so willful wallowing there, so skillful with his choice, and not in any real danger, I left, slammed the fort door hard, causing it to lock solid, then made fast tracks too on the parking lot gravel. On the barren freeway, as I drove home, I heard sniper fire, ping, ping, here and there, one bullet hitting and blowing off the turn-off signal sign for the street where I lived. At last, a home. At home, all alone. Wow. What do you do on the night a city riots? I'd soon find out. Othello would soon arrive. Just around midnight, pissed off as hell, and looking wild-eyed and exorcidal, to sock it to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
we're clear, what you just read for us is the setup for your former husband returns home and beats you within an inch of your life.
So I spent the rest of the evening listening to another riot of my own.
Perfect. Okay. You get a 5-minute break. That was a great reading. We have a lot of ground to cover. That was a good reading. So, are there any questions for Joan about this?
Had she,
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
Rivingtons really played there? Had you seen them before?
Pardon?
The Rivingtons, had you seen them play?
Do you know who they are?
Well, they pop up in my mouth, right?
God, I love the Rivingtons.
Okay.
Yes, I.
So
I'm sorry.
people want to know you're not making it up.
Yeah, I hope all of you know who they are. Google Rivingtons and they have. I don't think they have any YouTubes of them, but they've got them singing the pow ma mow ma mow ma mow. And the fort at nighttime was home to the blues, and that's the most fun job I ever had. Every night, once a week there was a different band. The Rivingtons were there at that time, and then I also danced to, got to dance to them. I meet those guys, and I danced with Junior Wells and Muscle White, and I can't name, I mentioned in my book all the people I've forgotten right now, but I really loved them.
Yeah,
The Bird, if you remember the Bird.
Of course.
There was a dance called the Bird. It was really stupid. Not the song. That was groovy and fine. But you can imagine what the Bird looked like.
I have a question, John. So all these weird dances, how did you learn them, and were they passed from person to person? Was there a canonical bird?
You asked me how did I learn how to dance?
Yeah, and was there like a canonical version of the bird? Did everyone know how to do the bird?
Well, I'm kind of a good dancer, and you learn by looking at someone else. I would look at the girl up on the stage, and then move around, and because I didn't know any of those dances. Well, I just talked to someone who was a little kid when I was doing this, who saw the TV shows late in the afternoon, Shindig and Lollapalooza, I don't know, there was another one.
Hullabaloo.
Yeah, and they came on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and just about every little kid from the age of 1 year old up to mothers were in there dancing with their little kids. And go-go dancing was really popular, just about everybody knew how to do it, and they danced, at the fort. The bands would come on, and everybody danced everywhere. A whole lot of dancing going on.
Yeah.
And so I just learned how to do it. And the dances were so easy. This wasn't Bob Fosse time or Shirley MacLaine. This wasn't Broadway.
Do you know what year the fort closed, by any chance?
It stopped being a blues place about when disco came in.
Right, it became a disco.
Yeah, I think it was Topless for a while, and Topless came around the early 70s, and then disco was, I went to it when it was a disco bar in the late 70s, because I took my workshop people at UCI there who didn't believe this fort story. And
we're gonna get to that.
And I okay, but anyway, so then after that, in the 80s, it was a disco, and then the 80s it became something else, and then the 90s it was a muffler shop, and Richard just went by it and he said it's now, it's a nudie bar with pole dancing, and I'm sure you didn't go inside. You and Kim.
Where was I?
Just read the sign.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this on our trip
Well, I
over to
think
the
you
Fosse?
Googled it, didn't you?
No,
That's unconfirmed that it's a movie bar, Joe. Kim, I would absolutely bring you into any Topless bar. I don't want you to think that. No, we don't have a confirmation of what happened at the
No,
fort.
but I've been by the fort about 2 or 3 weeks back, I think last summer. Yeah.
You need a break, but before you do, because we are talking about the fates of old go-go clubs and other forms of amusement for men, you have to talk about the wagon wheel. The wagon wheel? The twin wheel. So just bring us home with the twin wheels.
Yeah. Well, on Anaheim Street, there were all these nice restaurants, you know, for where the executives at the oil refineries had their lunches, and the cocktail waitresses wore little cute little dresses, you know, with bazooms, you know, big, you know, the German look, you know, the
Dental and trocken.
what was it called?
Dental and trocken.
Yeah. Beautiful lacy dresses that poofed out like tutus. And they were on the corner, I think it's Pico Avenue. Now here in LA it's Pico Avenue, and in Long Beach it's Pico Street, I think. It's on the corner of Pico and Anaheim. And the wagon, the Twin Wheels was just a beautiful place. It was modeled after Bonanza, the old Western look that everybody was so popular on TV, that everybody liked to watch on TV back in the 50s. So you can see the clientele that hung out there. You know, the older generation that sat back in the 50s with their martinis and watched Bonanza and Afghan Will Travel and all those, and Gunsmoke. And the bar was gorgeous. I think it was like maybe 3 times as long as this one in the old Western saloon type. Big, gorgeous bars. All wood, actual real wood from the Ponderosa itself, no doubt. And I think that restaurant could seat maybe 200 people for dinner, and about maybe at least 100 people at the bar. And it was packed every night. And that was down the street from the fort.
Okay, but you're forgetting about the naked paintings.
Oh yes, I wish I knew that artist's name.
Alan.
Alan?
Yeah.
That's his last name, A-L-L?
That's how he signed him, Alan. That's
Yeah, A-L-A-N?
Yeah.
And I bet if you Google it, you can see those old paintings. Yeah, these paintings were beautiful, and they were depicting alleged times of men in brothels. And I imagine, I think many of the saloons had brothels upstairs, and women with their garter belts, and here would be the lecherous man there kissing her knee or ankle or something, and they were very charming. And pictures of the old not the can girls, the saloon girls with their pantaloons, and they were really beautiful pictures. Don't know what happened to them. They tore down they tore down the Twin Wheels, I think about 1997 or something, and just mowed it down with a bulldozer. And I hope they took the paintings out. They were probably quite valuable.
Perfect, you did it. You did it.
Yay.
We're going to take a couple minute break, and then we're going to bring this on home with you being Charles Bukowski's mentor. I know you don't agree with me, but you really were. And we'll get into all of that.
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Well, thank you for sitting so calmly and patiently while I read that long story.
Careful attendees of bars throughout Southern California will find reproductions of the Allen, the naked women Allen paintings. Kim, you and I just found one in the basement of the King Eddie's Saloon about 4 months ago.
Oh, on the
Johnny didn't give it to us, but we have photos of it. Yeah.
on that menu.
On the menu, yeah. So the Allen girly paintings are really very interesting. That's why I brought it out. Okay, good. Joan is good. Perfect.
By the way, Joan, did you see who's up there on the wall? Did you see your friends up on the wall?
Okay, so let's bring this on home. We're gonna move into part 3. Joan, what did you have your water?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so part 3, Joan, is about you and Charles Bukowski. And because we are at Library Bar, because the Los Angeles Central Library is just across the street, and because Charles Bukowski wrote a very famous poem about the burning of the Central Library, I thought that you could start part 3 off by reading this poem. So let me set this up properly. If you don't know or you didn't notice on your way in, when you do leave, please make note. Even if you do, please make note. The 1925 Bertrand Goodhue Los Angeles Central Library is just across the street. Charles Bukowski, in his salad days, 2 distinct periods in his life: right before he leaves Los Angeles, before World War II, and right after he's incarcerated in a federal prison for draft evasion. He returns. He lives on Bunker Hill, which before was torn down. He would go to the Central Library a lot. In 1986, the Central Library was set fire, most likely as an act of arson, and the library was closed from 86 to 92. And Charles Bukowski wrote a very long and beautiful poem about the burning of the library. Joan, you're going to read the first 8 stanzas, and this is just a great way to get us started.
So it was closed down that long?
Okay, it was this. I apologize. It closed in 86. In 87, the Spring Street Annex opened, and there was a library down the street that dealt a little bit with the books. But basically, special collections, everything, Kim, you and I use to write tours, everything an historian would use to research in the library was unavailable, and I think a quarter of it was lost. They don't like to talk about it, but they lost a fair amount of special collections from 86 to 92. Which may explain why there are no good history books on Los Angeles, because no one was able to research for 7 years. Okay.
Oh, that was really sad. I went to the LA library on a field trip back in the 50s when I was a little girl. And God, it was just so beautiful. It's magnificent in there. I love this poem. And when I was reading it earlier, before I'm going to read it now, one of the things I discovered about it is, because he's kind of written my biography a little bit here, talking about his love of books, and I think most of you here are book lovers. Burning of the Dream. The old LA Public Library burned down, that library downtown, and with it went a large part of my youth. I sat on one of those stone benches there with my friend, Bali, when he asked, "You're going to join the Abraham Lincoln Brigade?" "Sure," I told him. But realizing I wasn't an intellectual or political idealist, I backed off on that. I backed off on that one later. I was a reader then, going from room to room, literature, philosophy, religion, even medicine and geology. Early on, I decided to be a writer. I thought it might be the easy way out, and the big boy novelists didn't look too tough to me. I had more trouble with Hegel and Kant. The one thing that bothered me about everybody is that they took so long to finally say something lively and or interesting, and I thought I had it over everybody of them. Over everybody then. I was to discover 2 things. A, most publishers thought that anything boring had something to do with things profound. I feel that way too. B, that it would take decades of living and writing before I would be able to put down a sentence that was anywhere near what I wanted it to be.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And that's just the first 8 stanzas. So just to wrap that up, Charles Bukowski famously brought the career of the novelist John Fontaine, my hero, back. And all of that happened at Central Library. So go.
And what exhibition is up right now?
Exhibition just opened at Central Library about Bunker Hill, the old neighborhood that Charles Bukowski lived in. It's really good. Joan, Linda King very famously dated Charles Bukowski. Linda King was the central character in his novel Women. Very famously, you own a bust she made of Charles Bukowski at a bronze casting, which I believe your husband has a copy of. She called you last week. I think this is a great way to begin part 3. Linda King called you last week. What happened?
Well, Linda claims to be a little psychic, and I think she is, because she called on April 14th or 15th, 2 weeks ago, to talk to me, and it was the 40th anniversary of the night I gave Bukowski a party in his honor in 1975. He was featured in my Pearl #3. And I'd been wanting to have a party in his honor anyway. And it was a terrible, terrible event. It's in both books, the Bukowski book and my memoir, about that disastrous party, because I invited a lot of poets and a lot of law students. I was going to law school at the time. And it was just a horrible party. And so Linda had called, not knowing that it was the anniversary of the party, and just to tell me that she had read my memoir. She read the Bukowski book and liked it, And because I honor Linda quite a bit in it, there's an interview I conducted with her that I reprinted in it. And also she had read my memoir, and her sisters, 2 of her sisters had read it, and she was repeating their compliments of it too, and how well I captured that time and place of the music, etc. But one of the things that she's pleased with, that after all these years, she realized that Bukowski and I weren't lovers. She expected this to be a great big confession that I would tell, oh, rockin' and rollin' and rumpin' and dumpin' and stuff and all the things that really happened between Bukowski and me. She finally believed me after all these years.
Good. All right. So we're Bukowski is a great place to pick up the thread of your memoir after you start to recover. Charles Bukowski reads a story. Why don't you start with the story he liked and his advice to you?
Okay. Well, the first draft of my memoir out there, which is now 280 pages of just the go-go stuff that happened in my life and my trauma and my ordeal with my disturbed ex-husband. I started out writing the go-go stuff. With Bukowski's blessing, he said I should write about it in '74 when he and I were talking on the phone a lot. So I compiled a 35 or 40 page chapbook called Tales of an Asian Go-Go Girl. And he read it, I sent it to him, he really liked it. He said that he didn't like the title, he said I wasn't ancient. And I was 33 at the time. And I really wasn't, not yet, but now I am. And he wanted me to change the title to The Crotch Watchers. Well, wouldn't Bukowski say that? I had a poem in the chapbook titled that. He happened to like it. He liked that title. And but it was quite inappropriate at the time and rather vulgar, and it's especially vulgar now. So I never did. But he encouraged me to write those, and he had liked all the poems, and he wanted me to write about those days.
Okay.
And
okay. Good. All right. So we're going to start to then go through the narrative of you getting. Well, we're going to get into the narrative of graduate school. Before we do that, I need you to give us your relationship with Charles Bukowski was very interesting. So just give us. You talked on the phone.
Yeah.
That's so. Just give us. You didn't go over and drink beer with him and pass out. I want so people. That might be what people think. You didn't like show up on his stoop and proposition John Martin instead because you've never met him and thought John Martin was Bukowski. So just tell us about
Well, Bukowski and I became friends, and much to his chagrin, but he did anyway because I talk a lot, as you can tell. And he called me on the phone a lot. We talked a lot on the phone, and he encouraged my writing. And it was one night he called me on the it was the 10th anniversary of what my husband had done to me, my ex-husband. And I had never talked to anyone about it. I tried to talk to a couple of shrinks along the way, and their reaction was, well, if you know why you're depressed and what's bothering you, you're not crazy. So I just tried to put it out of my mind what had happened, and I never could. And I told Bukowski about it. It was it happened on his birthday. It happened in 1965. It's 66, and then Bukowski happened to call me on his birthday, 1976. It was the bicentennial, and his girlfriend at the time, Linda King, had left him, and he had a new girlfriend, Cupcakes, who wasn't with him that night. So he called and he's moaning to me, and I've been drinking a lot of cheap white wine, and I sort of let it all hang out, and I told him, oh, blah, 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 and this happened and that happened. And he said, when I was all concluded, he says, well, baby, it was a bad night for both of us.
Okay, good. I think we're ready to begin. So we start you're enrolled in writing classes at Cal State Long Beach.
What happened to law school?
Kim,
Okay, just checking.
we're going to get to that. Okay, so we're now going to go through your graduate school path. You're going to start with what your writing instructor told you about your first go-go story and the advice he gives you, and you're going to somehow get us through law school and to the writing program at UC Irvine. Okay, I'm going to help you along the way, but that's what we're going to do.
Well, at Cal State Long Beach, I thought about going for a master's there, and I wanted to write my thesis on Charles Bukowski, and I titled it The Colloquial Classicist, the Poet as Entertainer. But they rejected that. They said, no, you can't write that. There's no data, there's no bibliography, anything ever written about Bukowski. So they rejected it. And because he was going to collaborate with me, it was going to be a quasi-memoir of him as told to Joan Jobe Smith. And when it was rejected, I went to law school. And then while I was in law school, I got accepted at UCI MFA program for fiction writing. And it was based on the fourth story. One of the stories I sent was the fourth story, and another story that included that biker scenario that was had been in prose form. So they accepted me for that, and so when I got in the program, my first night at the workshop, I submitted the fourth story and another story, and the students were outraged. They were horrified by that fourth story. They called it a shaggy dog story. Of course, they objected to the profanity that I can now get away with, and plus the gun. They didn't believe the gun. They didn't believe anybody would stand on the roof and watch the Watts Riots. They were young, all young kids. I was 37 at the time, and they were 22, 23, and a lot of them didn't even know about the Watts Riots. So one of the girls, one of my colleagues, took my story to the deans and tried to get me expelled for profanity, and said that I would ruin the reputation at UCI of this prestigious school. Well, the deans didn't kick me out. They probably thought she might be a tad of a little rabble-rouser. And my mentors there were Oakley Hall and McDonald Harris, and they very nicely told me, you can't write that here. It's tawdry. And that was their word. They called it tawdry, and I had to write something else. And I did. I wrote something else. Something nice that might get in the New Yorker someday. But it never did.
Perfect. So what I want to do, you explained to us you were really trying to focus on, you wanted to write a master's thesis on Charles Bukowski. Let's just take a small part, because we've discussed this at length. Let's take a small part of that and expand on it just for a little bit. The notion that Charles Bukowski changed poetry readings. Okay,
Yeah,
let's just go with that for a little bit.
Well, that's what impressed me so much about Bukowski. I was his probably ubiquitous and most adoring groupie. That's what I call myself. I attended like 12 or 13 of his readings over a period of about 5 years. He gave a lot of readings, and I was really impressed with how poetry he made it entertaining. Rod McEwen had been doing things, with his music, and he was writing love poems. And I know Rod McEwen gave live readings, but I never saw one. But I did see these of Bukowski and how he just delighted hundreds of people that he read to. And I was very impressed with that aspect. I didn't expect I would ever, be a Bukowski, and I'm not. But I don't know of any poets before that. Maybe Dylan Thomas delighted people, but I think he probably, didn't impress them too much with his drunken brawls. And Bukowski certainly offended a lot of people with his shenanigans too.
Okay, so the shenanigans. You're now going to explain my favorite incident about feminists and the blowjob poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Shenanigans, and Bukowski wasn't an Irishman, So he could really put a good old, German spin on it. He's a tough man. Well, back then, and I think now, I don't know any women right now that hate Bukowski the way he was hated back then. The feminists absolutely hated him. And now there's a group of young women writers and poets that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s that have Renee Dietrich calls herself daughters of Bukowski. That there's a large group of women that just really adore him. And I happen to adore him because I don't know of any poet that's loved women as much as Bukowski did in his poetry. We're the stars of all of his books, and he hardly ever writes a poem that a woman isn't the star of the poem. And but the feminists were uprising then. They were getting together, and they did a lot of good things for us women today that got us certain things that's been taken away. And I don't want to get into feminism because I couldn't call myself one because I just had too much to do with 3 kids. It's hard to be a feminist when you got 3 babies. And so they made a point of coming to his readings, and they would walk in together, in their jeans and their tight skirts and their hairdos, and acting, we're gonna kick some butt here. And there'd be like maybe 20, 30 feminists that would walk in, and I saw them do it at 3 readings. And they'd walk in together, sit in the front rows, and then when Bukowski would start to read, they'd start heckling him and ask him questions, offensive questions to him, I guess. One question was one of the feminists shouted out, "How come all your poems are use dirty words?" And his comeback was, "Well, tell me what a dirty word is. Give me an example of a dirty word." Then another feminist asked, "Why don't you ever write poems about your mother?" And he said, "Well, my mother died before I was born." So he would then proceed to read his poems, and should I tell about the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to hear about this.
I hate to say blowjob in front of my granddaughter.
Richard likes to say French date.
Blowjob. Blowjob. Okay. Le blowjob. Le bleu de job. So anyway, I forget which book is it. I think it's Factotum, or maybe
it's in Factotum,
where he has a long passage. Is it Factotum?
Yeah.
Yeah, where he has this willing philatelist who does something to him, and he added that was actually a poem in Women too, and he describes in detail her enjoyment of bleu de job, and she did this, and she did this, and she did that. And I was quite uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. I was 33, and these women stood up and just, that was the first time I saw them, and they just stormed out. And one of the things that would really set the feminists off, after he'd read a few poems, and he always had often there was an old refrigerator on the stage that would be full of his favorite beer, and he would stop and burp or do something offensive. And he did this on purpose. He'd open and chug down a beer, and how many pictures have you seen him going like that? There's one up here. Now he's sipping up there. He'd chug, and then he'd drink about 5 times and really get a buzz on it. And I know because he tried to fast or he tried to dry out before reading, and he kind of needed to. He drank a lot, and he would always get to a point, and then when the feminists hadn't left yet, he'd say, well, I gotta take a PISS. And the women, the feminists, and so the other things hadn't made him mad. The the chiming of the theater, that did it. So he'd leave the stage and he'd walk off, you know, like going from there to the men's room, and he'd be unzipping himself on the way. Make sure that the feminists saw that. And then they'd go. They'd leave when he left. And he did this at the Molten Theater in Laguna Beach for the Arts Festival of August 5th. And this was also on his birthday, August 16th, 1975. He pulled this old shenanigan and walked out, and then the theater was like probably half the people had left. And he came back and he sat down and he says, well, I see we got rid of the feminists. Now I can really tell you, read my poetry. And it was funny, after the feminists left, he'd read his good stuff. You know, the stuff about, you know, he liked something like The Library Bar. And he wrote some beautiful, beautiful poems. You know, he really has a lot of beautiful poems. So then he'd really get, and then the people who did, in fact, that Molten Theater, a prestigious professor at UCI got up and walked out. So I mean, the tender-eared ones would leave. And that's my bleu de jeu.
So let's bring this on home. We agreed that you would, in 1979, you finish you get your MFA from Irvine, 1978, 79. The 70s are over, so we're going to end with the 70s. I want you, starting with Deep Throat, telling us just how go-go is dead by 1974, and just bring us to the end of the 70s.
Yeah. Well, when I started out in the go-go world in '65, belly buttons were banned on the state beaches. Bikinis, not belly buttons. Everyone, you couldn't leave your belly button at home, go to the beach. I mean, yeah, got my misplaced modifier there for the English professors here. Okay, bikinis were banned on the beaches in California. And go-go was very obscene, and housewives picketed the go-go bars out, you know, out on the sidewalks in their nice, cute little, you know, Harriet Nelson dresses, and, you know, down with go-go. And so then I worked from 75 until 72, and go-go was pretty dead by 1969. And my last 2 years, I was actually called a bartender, and I didn't dance anymore. And oh, and let me real quick. I want to say I danced with Tina Turner.
Wow.
Yeah, at Daisy Mays out in Tustin. She played there, and I want to throw that in. That was fun. She didn't want me to dance with her, and after she said she was going to quit, all of us go-go girls didn't dance with her anymore because she was a star. But anyway, and she was. You can imagine what us white girls look like next to Tina Turner. You know, we're doing the funky chicken, and she's doing this. You know, she's master. You know, one of the greatest dancers ever lived, in my opinion. So anyway, by 1979, things were getting topless. The go-go bars were topless, and then right about 1979, I think Deep Throat, the movie, came out in 72. At every theater in your neighborhood, these housewives, what did they do then? I don't know. And who cared about go-go anymore? It was all over. You could walk down to your neighborhood theater and see Deep Throat. Do you know what Deep Throat is? Yeah. I hope you don't. Bad.
All right, so Joan, thank you. So the set, we're done with this. You've got us out of the 70s.
We're done.
One or two last notes. We agreed that we were going to say just something about both your parents, respectively. So Ray Abner, you wanted to close with this meditation that all fathers want to be heroes to their children, and that's what Ray was to you. So we'll just.
Well, my father did much to save my life, and fathers don't often get to do that. And my father lost his life saving my life. Like what he did in the throes of a heart attack, spent his last 6 weeks of his life getting me justice, or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to call it revenge, not at all, but it was his justice, and he died doing it for me. And this is one of the things that made me feel good about writing my memoir. The first chapter is about what he did, and I felt good about it. And we published it, had it published on his birthday, December 24th. He was born on Christmas Eve. And Daddy, you know, I've avenged the daddy. You know, Sylvia Plath didn't think much of her daddy. And you don't find much in literature. In fact, I can't think of anything in literature except for Jean Valjean, who saved Cosette, but he wasn't her father. And then my girlfriend brought up Archie Bunker, and I thought, he wasn't a great daddy. So just think about it. In literature and mythology, fathers don't do much to be heroes toward their daughters. And my father did that, and it's my opinion that modernly, the way men nowadays love their children, modernly I think a lot of young males have a different attitude about being daddies, and they're co-parenting very adequately and magnificently. And I think it's my opinion that all fathers want to be heroes to their children. And I let my father, I wrote it in print for him, and so now I made him a hero in paper and in real life.
Good. One last thing. The movie poems, the poem we started out with, they're really about your mother, for your mother, Marilyn. So we were just going to end this with the idea of the homesickness you feel for Marilyn. Your mother, I'm sorry, I didn't say Marilyn, your mother, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Your mother, yes, the homesickness you feel for your mother.
Oh, yes. My mother, Margie, is one of my main muses in my poetry. And when Richard and I were talking about this, I was remembering a quote from Robert Frost, that a poem begins with a lump in the throat, a kind of homesickness or lovesickness. And when I read that quote, I thought, that's it. That's why I write about my mother, Margie. And Bukowski's been a muse, but I haven't written about him. But anyway, that's how I describe my feelings toward my poetry. That it's kind of a going back, being lovesick and homesick. And I love this word that I recently found about 2 or 3 years ago. It's Celtic, hiraeth. It's spelled H-I-R-A-E-T-H. And it means homesickness, to go back to a longing, a place you long for and want to go again, but you never came.
That's it, you did it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming. And is it turned off?
No.
And it's been so fun to be here so close to that beautiful library.
Okay, good. Most important thing now, you have books. So go over to your books. I'm going to keep talking to you. Okay, you have your books. I got it. Go over to your books. You're selling them. Okay? We'll see you over there.
Thank you.
Okay? I'm going to wrap this up. Okay, thank you.
Why does I keep looking for
No, just go. You know where the books are. Go over there. All right, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We'll be back next month. Next month, we are going to have our good friend, Kristen Bedford. She's going to be talking about her photography, about spirituality. She spent a lot of time with a group in Pennsylvania. Very interesting. I'm not going to talk. We have it on the website. It's about photography and faith in modern society. We'll see you then. I want to thank everyone so much for coming. And
Richard, what's the bus tour next week?
Oh, next week is my bus tour on Charles Bukowski. Yeah, next Saturday. Maybe Joan and Fred will get on the bus again. They've been on the bus before. So thank you so much. God bless.